Welcome back to Hoochos. Today on Hoochos, we're going to explore some plants that I've wanted to propagate and grow for a long time now. And I've just managed to get my hands on 3 of them. And they were really cheap, which I'm stoked about. The plant I'm talking about is these. These are Wasabi Matsuma. This is the true wasabi that you would usually find in high-end Japanese restaurants. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna find a home for these wasabi plants. Wasabi plants are notoriously hard to grow. They like very specific environmental conditions and have very specific water and nutrient requirements. So first of all, let's get to finding a place in the greenhouse that is suitable for these plants, which are a full shade plant. They only require minimal sun, and by minimal I mean really low amounts of light. So to start with, I'm going to take some palm measurements around the greenhouse and we'll find out what my baseline for full sun is and how we can scale that down to the wasabi plants. And we're coming out of winter right now, so full sun won't be full sun. However, we can get an idea of the percentage of light that's reaching the place that we're going to put the wasabi. So I'll take some measurements and we'll figure out what the ideal location for these plants is. So just quickly, for those of you who aren't familiar with this device, this is a palm meter. Now a palm meter measures the spectrum that plants photosynthesize, which is different to a lux meter in the sense that a lux meter actually measures the spectrum of visible light, which is visible to the human eye. This measures the spectrum of usable light for plants. This is the potato patch, and I would consider this area obviously full sun. As you can see, I've added an extra plank's height to the bed and have been topping it up and just burying these potato plants as they grow. So we'll take a measurement of full sun here, and then we'll move into the greenhouse and take measurements in the greenhouse. Full sun reading is 1200. So this shade cloth here was purchased and it's 50% shade cloth. So theoretically, I should be getting around 600 to 650 par because I am getting a fluctuating reading here of about 1240 to 50. So maybe like 625 we should get inside if this is truly 50% shade cloth. So we're on the exact opposite side of the shade cloth, and I'll just place it down. And we're getting a reading of 794, so about 800. So we're looking at that shade cloth being probably only about 40% shade cloth. That'd almost be like 35 to 40% shade cloth. So it's about, 800, which means that if we do some rough calculations, give me a second. I'll just do a quick calculation. So 800 is 64% of 1250. So this shade cloth is cutting out about 36% of the light coming into the greenhouse, which is definitely not ideal for wasabi. So the ambient temperature right now is just over 20 degrees Celsius. It's 10:30 in the morning here, and it's gonna get warmer than that. That's about the top end of wasabi's ideal temperature range. So I really am looking to cool down the environment that I'm going to put the wasabi into. So let's take some temperature samples from around the greenhouse. First up, let's just do a full sun sample. So the ground here is 33 degrees Celsius, which is 91.4 degrees Fahrenheit. The ground underneath the NFT in a shaded spot is 24.1 degrees Celsius, which is 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if I take a temperature on the rails of the NFT, 19 degrees Celsius, which is 66 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is a marked change. Okay, so this is the problem with sort of filming on the fly. Change of plans. So a major consideration in system design is maintenance of the system. And if I'm to create a system underneath the NFT for these wasabi, I'm actually going to have to change the res quite regularly. From what I've read up on wasabi, is very picky about its nutrient solution, And if I'm to have a separate res for it under here, because obviously it can't feed back into my greens res. By the way, Wasabi's EC is around about the same as Brassica's, which is about 1.2. Brassica's like cos. So this res that I use for my NFT would be an ideal system, purely because of the size of it. The Wasabi is not going to be as picky about the changes of water because it's such a large reservoir. So I'm actually going to change the location, even though it's not ideal for temperature, up to here. And I'm going to come up with a way of extra shading for this system. And hopefully if I enclose this system within this environment, I'll be able to keep the heat off the Wasabi. I'm going to remove the bell siphon, and it's going to act like a Wilma system where I'll top feed the Wasabi and it will drain down and then back into this res. Now all I need to do is set up this bed, and I'm going to use either clay pebbles or scoria. I think the clay pebbles, then we can just feed around the Wasabi and it can drain back into the NFT. For reference, the par here is about 800, which is huge, and I do not want that much par, so I'm definitely going to have to shade this system. So I'm just turning this bed around to get this drain point at the lowest point that I can possibly get it. So pull this out. Might give this a bit of a clean actually. All right, so what I've done is I've removed all of the internals from the bell siphon, which will mean that it'll just drain out through this hole, but at the lowest point, which is what I want. I don't want pooling water at the bottom too much. A little bit won't matter. So ideally, I just want the water to pass over the top of the Wasabi and then drain through. I don't want them sitting in water at all. Okay. So now I'm just going to fill up the system. Scoria or hydrogen? Might go scoria. It feels right. Although if I use hydrogen, I can use these beds again. Hydrogen it is. So this is just a worm farm that I've repurposed, and a couple of sieves as well. I hate cleaning hydrogen. So it begins. Okay, so now that we've got our riverbed, we can go about enclosing this environment so that I've got about 15% of natural light shining through. I was going to buy like 90% shade cloth, but it's super expensive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the shade cloth that I've got left over from this build, and we're going to double it over until we get the appropriate amount of light coming through for the wasabi plants. All right, I found this old frame that I had lying around, and it's kind of perfect for a shade frame. So I'm actually going to extend these two sections so I get the entirety of the bed shaded. And then I can just attach a shade cloth to this structure, and then I can easily put it on and take it off as I like, rather than hanging it from the roof, because I actually want to install retractable shades across the roof, and that would have interfered with the retractable shades. Now, the one thing this may impact is the NFT, because it will definitely shade the NFT out to about here, and it's 11:30. So I mean, these plants won't be getting as much sun, well, even out to here in the morning, but that's okay. I can probably utilize this section of the NFT as the nursery area, and move all of my greens over to this section depending on how they react to the shade caused by it. We'll tackle that problem when we get to it. Now that we've got the shade made up, let's have a look at how much this cuts down on the par inside the enclosure. I'm still getting 1,150 to 1,200 outside, about 800 inside. If we go inside the actual enclosure, I'm getting 430. So I've actually got 4 layers over the top and pretty much 3 layers on each side. So I might even need to go higher, higher shade cloth than this, or keep layering over the top. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to put Panda film just in between the layers of the shade cloth and just block out the sun completely from the top, so it's only getting side lighting, which is reflected lighting. So I think I'm gonna have to do that. We can't get much more full shade than that. We've got the par down to 290. About 300 par, which is like seedling levels, and that's good. That is a good par. All right, I had to completely block the top for that though. I'll just show you. So that's the par. It's about 300, and that's with direct sun. So I'm quite happy with that. Okay, I'm just gonna move this for a second. The par there now is 680. So I reduced the par by half, and that's reduced from the outside par by another third. So I'm sitting on about probably 70% less sunlight. I hope that's enough. At least it won't be really harsh during the middle of the day because the top will be covered completely with that Panda film. So I'm hoping that really helps to control the amount of sun that they get. For this system, I'm going to be using these. These are hydro halos. You do not need to use these. You can just top feed in the same manner that you use 4mm tubing in the Dutch bucket system. I'm only using these because I got my hands on a couple of them. No product placement here, just I had them lying around because I was going to use them for a grow, and I figured, why not this one? I've got 2 6-inch hydro halos, and I've got 2 9-inch hydro halos. Now I'm going to prefer the 9-inch hydro halos, but I will be using 1 6-inch because I don't have 3, and I've got 3 plants. I'm going to be using a pump on a timer to top feed these plants. The pump I'm using is the AP1050 AquaPro from Bunnings, and so if you want to emulate this system, this is what I'm going to be using, and it will be running just 13mm tubing up to the hydro halos. So I'm going to go about setting that up now, and after that we can wash our plants and put them into the system. Okay, so to run this system, I'm going to be using a digital timer. It's actually a smart home timer, so I can program it with my phone. I'll throw the schedule up like here. I'm probably just going to do 2-minute irrigations on a fairly regular basis, like once every 2 hours or whatever this says essentially. So I'm just going to plug this in. I want to turn it off first though, because what I want to do is I want to show you how it runs. So I'm going to plug it in here. Let's get the camera onto the halos. Turn it on at the power, and I'll show you what it looks like when it irrigates. Here we go. So as you can see, it's just a waterfall of water around the outside of the plants. So that should cascade down into the root area, around the root area of the plants. And this is trying to mimic water flowing in their natural environment, which is like streamside rock beds. Hopefully this is good enough to mimic that water movement without actually flooding their roots. That's why I didn't want to do a flood and drain. I didn't want their roots submerged at all. So now I'm going to wash off the roots of the wasabi, and we can plant them into our spacings. Quite late in the day, and that's what I wanted. I wanted really no sunlight. And also it's towards the end of winter. So for the first part of their growth, they're pretty much gonna have the ideal temperatures, or the closest to ideal that I can get them in my location for the start of their growth. Now I've got to get them through about 12 to 18 months of growth before they're harvestable. So this is what the plants look like right now. They're really healthy, surprisingly growing in soil. So now I'm just gonna go and wash the roots off. Now I've told you time and time before, do not put plants that you wash roots into hydro without quarantining them, and I'm gonna go and do it again, and I'm gonna risk that whole NFT system only because I really want to try these plants. Just gonna pop them out like that. Look at that. So they are a really healthy root system. We really don't want to damage this root system. There's no circling of the roots or anything, which is, I was hoping that their roots would be contained within the middle, because otherwise I'm going to damage them a lot. I really hope I don't damage them. All right, well, here we go. So I'm just being super careful. Just being super careful with these plants, just working the water back and forth, trying to let it do all the work, getting this soil out of the roots. I don't want to really physically do it at all. I'm probably going to end up leaving a fair bit on the roots just so I don't disturb them too much. Alright, so I've pretty much accepted there's no way I'm going to get all of the dirt out of that. And even if I do, the microbes will still be in there. I'm taking the risk. That's just the way it is, I guess. So plant number one. Go over here. Number two. 3. All right, let's run the system. The system's running and is feeding around the roots of the plants. There is one more thing that I'm going to add into this bed. So because this is a fresh bed, usually it would be a flood and drain bed, but this is a Wilma system. I'm actually going to inoculate the clay balls and the roots with this. This is great white. It's a mycorrhizae, beneficial bacteria and Trichoderma mix. So it basically populates your flood and drain beds and hydroponic systems with beneficial fungi and bacteria that will take up places in the ecological niches where you could get bad bacteria. So what I'm actually going to do is, around the hydro halos, I'm just going to sprinkle the great white, and what that will do is that will travel down through the clay balls and inoculate the beds so that the mycorrhizal and bacteria, the fungi and bacteria, can do their work and will hopefully outcompete any bad bacteria or fungi that I've added through the soil that I've added in. So I'm gonna put these on a timer, replace the shade, and we'll see how they grow. All right, so it's been over 24 hours now, and I'm pretty sure they've survived the first day. And it was actually pretty hot in the middle of the day. So let's take the shade off and see how they've done. I just have to disconnect the time-lapse camera. So this will become a part of my regular updates. I'm not gonna do an individual video. I may at the end once the time lapse is done, but if you are interested in seeing the progress of these on a regular basis, hit like and subscribe for updates on my updates. Here we go. Oh, yep. Okay, they've done really well. Can't see any real signs of stress. Well, that's good news. I doubt that I'd see too much stress in 24 hours. They're upright. The leaf structures are rigid, so there's no wilting. It is cool at this point. I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with this result. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hoochos. Like and subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell for the updates, and I'll see you next time. I'm so keen to eat some fresh wasabi. I've actually even bought the little grater thing that they do, like in the restaurants, the fake shark skin where you grate it, and I'm gonna have like, I want the nasal burn.